Good morning, everybody. So today what we're going to do is start looking at how we organize stuff that comes after the verbs in English. As I've mentioned before, about 60% of the mistakes that I tend to hear with Spanish speakers of English are connected to the verb and what people do after the verb. And sometimes it's a little hard to understand why that's important, but it's really important, especially because English doesn't use as much subjunctive as Spanish does. And in English, it's important to organize the information after the verb, especially so you can avoid translation mistakes, because if you're making translation mistakes, especially on an exam, that's going to cost you points. So our aim for this today is we're going to do four specific things. We're going to create sentences where there's no translation. We're going to learn how to organize information after the verb, which is what we were talking about with predicates, and look at how to connect information within a sentence so that way you sound more like a native speaker. And I'm going to take an example that I hear a lot in class, and it's the sentence, "I want that he leaves." Now, it's important to remember that in English, people would probably understand that sentence, but they're going to know that it doesn't sound native. Okay, let's take a look at the various parts of this sentence. In this sentence, we've got one verb and we've got two verbs here. Okay, want and leaves. Now, what giddies learn when they are learning Spanish is that if you have two verbs and the first verb does not guarantee the outcome of the second verb, you use subjunctive, especially when the subjects are different. That's the rule they teach us. In this case, wanting something doesn't guarantee that it's actually going to happen. And because we need to show that I can't guarantee that my wanting is going to make the second verb happen, we use subjunctive. Quiero que se vaya. Okay? In English, that's not entirely necessary, because English doesn't look at it as a problem of philosophy or control. English looks at it in the idea of how many subjects do you have compared to how many verbs you've got. So the fact that I want something, but that doesn't control the fact that it happens, isn't relevant in this case. Instead, what English does is it looks at the different parts of the sentence. So, for example, let's take a look at want. Want is a transitive verb. You always want something. So we want, what do we want? The first thing that we've got here is the object. So we have to make sure that we have the direct object of want, because again, it's transitive. You always want something. So the only direct object that's available is him, which is the object pronoun. But then you have an extra problem. If I want him is one complete verb unit, what happens to the next one? And that's easy. In English, if a verb does not have a subject, or it's the same, the subject would be the same as a verb, as something that's connected to another one, you put it in infinitive, like that. Why? Because in this case, it's not a philosophical problem of whether I can control the action. It's just, do I have enough subjects? And in this case, I don't. Want, because it's a transitive verb, I have to complete this first before I go on to the second part. And because leave technically doesn't have a subject, because want cannot be the direct object, him cannot be the direct object of want, and the subject of leave at the same time, I have to make this one complete before I move on to the next one. Okay, so why do verbs need to infinitive? Okay, because these structures, the verbs, don't need subjunctive. Subjunctive is very limited in English. It tends to be for very, very formal language and very formal situations. So why do I need it? The verbs don't need subjunctive. It's a case of not enough subjects. Or maybe the subject is the same for a whole bunch of subsequent verbs. And this is especially true when you're talking about actions or states at some point in the future. I don't know exactly when, because if I knew when, I wouldn't be using the infinitive. I'd probably be using a structure that needed present continuous for future or going to. So if I know it's an action that happens in the future from when I'm speaking, but I don't know exactly when, then I use the verb plus to-infinitive. Okay? Think of it this way. You're thinking about summer vacations, you're making plans for your summer holidays. It's very common to use the want to structure for future plans. This summer we want to go kayaking. We want to travel to France. This summer we want to walk the Camino de Santiago. Okay, for our holidays. In each one of these statements, I'm not talking about something that happens now. I'm talking about something that happens at some point in the future, even if I don't know exactly when. Okay? Or think about New Year's Eve. Okay? Think about January 1st. It's a very, very common time when people tend to make their promises to themselves for the next year. So that's really common to hear. I promise to, next year I promise to lose 10 kilos. Do better at school. Next year I promise to learn French. Okay? At each point in time, I don't know exactly when this is going to happen. I just know it's going to happen in the future. And that's a really good example. Another good example of this is typically when you start learning something in a classroom situation or in a seminar, your teacher explains what you're going to learn to do or what you will learn to do. In this class, you will learn to use English grammar properly. You will learn to complete an income tax return correctly. Or you will learn to dance sevillanas, just to bring a very Spanish example into that. But again, when the teacher says that, or when you read that in the course materials, they're talking about during the time of the course. They're not exactly saying that on this particular day, you're going to do this. And the most common ways, especially for this, the most common verbs, especially the verbs for in the future, tend to be verbs that talk about something you do now with an eye towards the future. Agree to walk the Camino de Santiago. Decide to learn Italian. Learn to speak French. Promise to do something. Hope to see you next year. Arrange to meet at the restaurant. Appear to be happy, or ask someone to do something. Okay? Now, go to the Google Docs exercise, which I've sent you. You'll notice that there are several different parts to it, and you must complete all the parts in order to finish the exercise. the exercise is set up so that if you don't complete all the questions, you can't finish the exercise. So try your best. And if you have any questions, remember, send me an email at stopspanglish@gmail.com. Send me your questions and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And don't forget that you can always find new and unusual information about learning English on these two websites. The blog is stopspanglish.blogspot.ca. That's the one that's updated all the time. And for general information about Stop Spanglish, you can go to www.stopspanglish.com. So, all the best. Good luck. Write if you have questions. And I'll talk to you soon.